I am everyone who ever died without a voice, or a prayer, or a hope, or a chance.
Leonard Peltier is a Native American activist who has been in prison for more than 46 years, serving 2 consecutive life terms for a crime he maintains he did not commit. In 1977, he was convicted of killing 2 FBI agents, Ronald Williams and Jack Kohler, during a shootout on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. Peltier was a member of the American Indian Movement, AIM, founded in 1968 during the Civil Rights Movement to advocate for the rights of Native Americans. The murders occurred at a time when AIM supporters and residents of Pine Ridge were being intimidated and killed, allegedly by paramilitaries connected to the government. A climate of fear and terror prevailed. After 2 AIM members were acquitted of the killings, the FBI coerced witnesses into saying they saw Peltier shoot the agents. Ballistics evidence that could have aided Leonard's defense was hidden from his lawyers.
The only thing I'm guilty of is struggling for my people. I didn't kill those agents.
It was not a fair trial, the conclusion reached by federal appeals judge Gerald Heaney, who stated, the prosecution withheld evidence favorable to the defendant, and the FBI used improper tactics in extraditing Peltier and otherwise in investigating and trying Peltier's case.
I'll be an old man when I get out. If I get out.
Leonard Peltier spent more than 46 years in prison, some of which was in solitary confinement. He is now 78 years old and in rapidly declining health. There are concerns that he is not receiving adequate medical treatment and his condition could be fatal.
They're giving him the death penalty by leaving him in that type of an environment. The man needs medical treatment. He needs to have access to medical treatment. If they're not going to give medical treatment to him, they need to release him as soon as possible.
Amnesty International is calling on President Biden to grant Leonard Peltier clemency before it's too late. President Biden has a chance to rectify a case that has troubled many people for decades. It's an appeal supported by several Nobel Peace Prize laureates, including the late Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu, and dozens of religious and human rights leaders from the U.S. and around the world. Please join them and add your name to Amnesty's petition to President Biden. It's time to release Leonard Peltier.
Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in for such an important show. Today is Indigenous Peoples Day, which essentially should be every day. And also it's not a national holiday in all states yet, as it should be. But thank you all so much for tuning in. This is so important. Tonight I have 3 guests who are very close to Leonard Peltier personally. So it is such an honor to have them and to have them today of all days. So I do want to welcome Lenny Foster, who is Leonard's spiritual advisor. Don Lawson, who is Leonard's personal assistant. And Tracker, who just came to us tonight as such a wonderful surprise, who is a board member for Leonard. So thank you all so much for joining. This is incredible. First, I do want to open with some of the things we saw in that video. As far as, a criminal injustice point. So first we want to discuss, okay, it happened in 1975. 2 FBI agents were shot. But however, it's my understanding that there was a young Native American gentleman who was also shot, who they refused to do testing on. Tracker, is that something you can address?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. We could hear you, now we can't. Yeah, in the last panel I was in, my phone got so hot and then I couldn't turn my camera on, and Mute, and actually my mic would mute on its own. I don't know why. I apologize.
It's all good. Did you hear my question? I think we're unfortunately having some tech issues. Lenny, would you be able to take that question?
Okay. I've known, I first met Leonard Peltier in Denver, Colorado, 1970. And I was a third year college student at the time. And he was traveling through Denver from Page, Arizona up to South Dakota, but he wanted to know where the AIM office was there in Denver. And I told him it's right there on Colfax Avenue at the corner, and pointed out where the office was on the second floor. And that's how I became acquainted with him. We met on the streets of Denver, and I ran into him a number of times through the couple years there, from 1970 to 72. In 1972, we had a big campaign in Cass Lake, Minnesota, for the fishing and hunting rights, struggle of the Anishinaabe people. And they requested the American Indian movement onto their territories, reservation, to stop the indiscriminate poaching, hunting of their wildlife, including elk and deer, and fishing without any permit or license to hunt and fish. And the tribal council requested the American Indian movement to come and provide security for the people, because it was a very intense environment because of the frustration and the anxiety of the non-Indians taking advantage of the Anishinaabe people not enforcing the compliance of their hunting and fishing rights. And Leonard Peltier was with the Milwaukee AIM chapter. I was with the Denver AIM chapter, and we all converged on Cass Lake, Leech Lake. That's in northern Minnesota. And we were security. We were young, 22 years old, and we provided the security, set up roadblocks to stop any traffic coming in that were going to do late night poaching and hunting and fishing, and which was illegal because the non-Indians were coming on there to take advantage of the non-enforcement and the compliance of the tribal laws. So it became a big issue for sovereignty, self-determination, which was the right of the Anishinaabe peoples and also other Native Americans, American Indians, to have their own laws enforced and complied with. And that became an issue. And the American Indian movement was there to help provide the security and enforce, and to put a stop to the poaching and just the indiscriminate taking of the fish and wildlife. So it was quite an experience for all the young security, the American Indian movement. And I saw, after 2-3 campaigns, one being in 1969, 1970 in Alcatraz Island, where the young Native American students from UC Berkeley, UCLA, San Francisco State college and other young natives that came to occupy the Alcatraz Island and reclaimed the land that was left behind by the government and within the 1868 treaties. Any land that was left abandoned could be reclaimed by the Indians, by the Indian people. So that uh, uh, concept was enforced, and the young students were well read on the treaties. So they decided to put out a call throughout the country for everyone to converge and occupy Alcatraz Island. And that was the catalyst that set forth this uh, inspiration for such a campaign, demonstration, if you will, protest. And it really established that momentum for the young Indian students, who were mostly students, but also people that were living on the reservations. Some were just coming out of the service, the Vietnam War, and others that coming out of the institutions and detention, the prisons. So it was quite a mix of young, idealistic and adventurous people, but it also set a stage for a serious moment in history where a movement began, and such leaders as Lenny Warjack, John Trudell, Ed Castillo, Richard Oakes, people like that provided that inspiration and leadership. And this was before the actual formation of the American Indian movement, which began in the Minnesota State Prison and developed into a movement, an organization, 1968, 1969. So things started happening as a result of Alcatraz, and then from there, there was other demonstrations at Pitt River. A lot of the young natives, myself included, went back to the sweat lodges, to the Sundance, learning about the sweat lodge ceremonies, pipe ceremonies, the songs, the dancing, the ceremonial practices. So it was quite a movement that's throughout this country. Leonard Peltier was a part of that, myself, and others. And we had such notable leaders such as Richard Oakes, John Trudell, and eventually Russell Means, Dennis Banks, Clyde Belcourt, Vernon Belcourt, and people like that. And so Leonard Peltier, myself, and others, we were young, we were idealistic, and we want to be part of this movement. And it just swept the whole country there, beginning in 1969, 1970, 1972. After the Sundance at Crow Dog's Paradise and the Rosebud, there was a big meeting that took place. Plans were made to have a big caravan go across the country and to converge on the Department of Interior, the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Washington, D.C., to meet with the United States officials, including the president and the Nixon administration. But because of misunderstanding and the people who converged, the American Indian movement, the Trail of Broken Treaties caravan was not well received, resulted in a takeover of the Bureau of Indian Affairs building, and it set forth a very serious tone for the movement. And that was the first time I seen Indian paint being put on the young natives' faces, including myself. Leonard Peltier was a security. I was security for Denver AIM. And you got to remember, we were all young, 21, 22 years old. And now I'm 76 years old. Leonard Peltier is 80 years old. So you can see by the years, over 50 years, this movement has transformed the pride and the dignity of Indian people to stand up on our treaty rights, the rights of self-determination and sovereignty. And these concepts may perhaps be foreign to many non-Indians, but for the Indian people, it's a very alive and well. We've taken our concerns to Congress. We've taken our concerns to the state legislatures, to the United States government, to the human rights, Geneva, Switzerland, New York City. And this indigenous rights has swept other indigenous people throughout the world, people from South America, Australia, Hawaii, New Zealand, Central America, Mexico, North America. So you can see that what began in the Minnesota State Prison with Clyde Balcourt, George Mitchell, people that were incarcerated began by reading, by studying and researching, participating. It was a very strong move to have the pipes introduced into the prison system, to have spiritual leaders come into the prisons to teach, which myself, I became one of those individuals that participated in building the sweat lodges in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, helped negotiate the policies for religious freedom and Native rights to practice our traditions, speak the language, have access to spiritual leaders to teach. So this was a movement that Leonard Peltier, myself, and others became involved, and it just kept growing. But it also took a very serious tone, because when you're fighting for treaty rights, you're going to have confrontations, and we had some major confrontations with the United States government, the federal marshals, the FBI, which resulted in a very deadly, serious confrontation in Oglala, South Dakota in 1975 in June, which resulted in 2 FBI agents being killed, and a young Native American, Joe Stutz, was also killed. So that it set a very dangerous and serious tone for treaty rights. And Leonard Peltier was he was alleged to have participated. There were no actual witnesses stating that he was the shooter, but he was the victim of alleged affidavits that were fabricated. Witnesses were terrorized. Witnesses were threatened to testify, provide false testimony against him. And he was basically railroaded into prison and given 2 life sentences. And we're still fighting for that right to have him released. And this is, in a nutshell, what I have participated and what I have witnessed as a member of this movement, the Indian Rights Movement, the American Indian Movement, the International Indian Treaty Council. And we've had many notable leaders, but many of them have passed away. Hank Adams and Pedro Biznat, Leonard Crodog, Dennis Banks, Russell Means, Ted Means, Clyde Balcourt, and Vernon Belcourt, and few survivors. But our children, grandchildren, and other allies that we have in this movement who have stepped up to help create this understanding and seek justice, seek solidarity with our allies, and we base our fight on treaties. Many of our Indian people, Indian nations, 200 years have made agreements called or contracts called treaties. 1868 Treaty of the Lakotas, the Dene, my people, Navajo. We signed a treaty with the United States government in 1868 in June. Fort Sumner, called the Long Walk, and others like the Cherokees and the Southeast Indian nations were removed on what would become known as the Trail of Tears. And so we have many stories and many history of our people's struggle. But the one that really stands out today in this generation is the incarceration, the illegal incarceration of Leonard Peltier. Leonard Peltier is our Nelson Mandela, our Geronimo. He continues to fight, but he's not in the best of health. He's suffering from diabetes, high blood pressure, a number of ailments, and many people have gone to bat, tried to get him executive clemency, and have the administrations dating back to President Clinton and others through the years, including President Biden. Now it's going to rely on the future presidents, which would be Kamala Harris. That remains to be seen if they have the courage, the wisdom to seek justice and seek a reconciliation between the Indian nations through the years of suffering and living a very difficult life. As we said earlier, it's been said all day long. Indigenous rights, Indigenous Day, that's every day to us. We live that. It's a hard life. It's hard to be Indian. And Leonard Peltier has been locked up a majority of his time in USP Leavenworth, USP Lewisburg, USP Coleman. And we need to continue to seek his release, his freedom to return home to North Dakota and reunite with his children, his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, his relatives on the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa territories. And as long as he's in prison, we're not free. We feel that. I myself have been friends with him for 51 years, since 1970. And I've been visiting him for 39 years, since 1985. It was my responsibility to pray with him, to do a cleansing, purification ceremony, the sweat lodge ceremony. We had to fight for that right. It wasn't given to us by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. We had to go into these prisons and build these sweat lodges and take the pipe. Archie Fire, David Chief, Leonard Crowdog, individuals like them, Eugene B. Doc Anderson, myself included. I grew into that responsibility to help his humanity and his sanity. The prison is a very dangerous place. It's a very dangerous place, especially the maximum security. And many of our young Native Americans are incarcerated in these prisons throughout the United States. There are more people in prison in the United States prison system than any other prison in the world. Think about that. And Leonard Peltier is the example of trying to take his humanity away, his sanity, and it's been hard. Many of us have been doing time with him, his family, his relatives, and friends, and just allies, and those of us that have been in the movement. Like I said, I've known him in the American Indian movement, and we've did our time on the front lines. The Little Bighorn bunker, the Wounded Knee. That was the bunker that I carried a rifle and defended the people at Wounded Knee, South Dakota, in 1973. And we had 71 days of extreme firefights, and it's a very dangerous experience. People died, people were shot, people got wounded, and some even became wounded. The spirit, which is called PTSD, and it's a time in history. It's a continuation of that experience that our ancestors 200 years ago. I feel that there is a personal vendetta against Leonard Peltier because he's ancestors Dakotas and Lakotas. And the Lakotas were the ones that fought Custer and killed Custer in the Little Bighorn in 1875. And I think that FBI federal marshal have a personal vendetta to ensure that Leonard Peltier never released from prison because of what happened at the Little Bighorn, where Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull killed Custer, and they never got over that. The United States government does not deal with the Indian nations in good faith. You're stealing our resources, our timber, our coal, uranium, our water. Now they want our water. Water is a very precious commodity for Indian people. But the government and the white people, the states, they want Indian water. We have the water rights, and it's guaranteed in the treaties. But if they comply, enforce the treaties, that remains to be seen. Are they going to continue to steal? So these are some of my thoughts, and these are some of the experiences when I think of Leonard Peltier, when I visit him in Coleman. He's incarcerated in the United States Penitentiary, Coleman 1. That's one of the most secure prison, maximum secure prison in the country, along with USP 80X in Florence, Colorado, Leavenworth, Kansas, Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, Florence, Arizona, and Santa Fe, New Mexico. Places like this where Indian people, young Indian men and women, and one of my youngest clients I had, and the 37 years I did this work, was a 14-year-old young native. And I asked him one time, I said, what'd you do to end up in here in this maximum security doing time with the adults? He said he stole his teacher's car. And he didn't steal it. He was given permission to drive it, but it ended up he was being accused of taking that car without permission. And he was put in juvenile detention. He ended up in the maximum security. So these kind of experiences are very real for our people, men and women. And that's the work that I've been doing with the Navajo Nation Corrections Project. I was a spiritual advisor for over 2,000 Native Americans, including Leonard Peltier.
Wow.
I used to visit Leonard every quarter, every 3 months, and we would pray and smoke the pipe. The pipe, the Plains Indians, the Lakota, the pipe is a very sacred item, just like corn pollen is to our people, Dene, Apaches. Corn pollen is a very sacred item that we use in our ceremonial ways, and the pipe is used in that manner for the Lakotas and the Plains Indians, the Sundance, the Sweat Lodge ceremony. So these are some ceremonial ways and practices that continue. We continue with Leonard Peltier's encouragement, and he is the inspiration for this struggle among the young people. That's why it's very important we get him out so he can go home up to North Dakota and spend his remaining years with his people. And I think that he, like I said, he's our Nelson Mandela. He's our Geronimo. And if you know the history of Nelson Mandela, if you know the history of Geronimo, what happened to them when they were incarcerated, they wouldn't let him go until, well, they never let Geronimo go. He died in prison, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Nelson Mandela got old, and he was finally released from Robben Island in South Africa. And he was able to be elected by his people to lead his country. And we just want Leonard Peltier to be released so he can go home and enjoy his remaining years. He's not young anymore. He's having poor health. He's 80 years old. Like I said, many of us feel like we did time. We're doing time with him. We got old with him. I met him when we were 22 years old in the streets of Denver, Colorado. Now he's in Coleman One, a Supermax facility in Florida. And I'm here on the Navajo Reservation in St. Michael, Arizona. I'm a grandfather now. But I was able to obtain 2 college degrees, worked on my master's, and I applied to law school. But life continues, and that was my way of educating myself so I can help Leonard Peltier and provide him that support and that inspiration. He's a well-read man. He keeps up on everything. Very intelligent. He's a very talented artist. He's a very talented painter, and some of his paintings are in some of the most notable people here in the United States. And he's a very accomplished artist, painter, and he's a very intelligent person. He's well read, and we continue to support his justice and freedom. And we see that it will happen soon. There's some good people working on his behalf through the ad hoc committee. Attorney Jennifer Jones and Don Lawson and people like that. Paulette. There's people, and there's others that are in the background, like Tracker. She's been working on Leonard Peltier's freedom for years, and others. Tony Gonzalez, Bill Means, people like that. sometimes you don't hear their names, but they're doing some good work. We're trying to get them out. We've taken his case into the United Nations, Geneva, Switzerland, a permanent forum in New York City. The Special Rapporteur for Indigenous People, Francisco Panchacali, went to visit him, and the International Indian Treaty Council was able to facilitate that. So we have many people in this forum this evening, Indigenous Peoples Day. Like I said, for us, we live that. Every day is Indigenous people. It's our day, it's our time, it's our existence. And I just want to thank you and thank all of you. I'm going to say about that much. Iso di kun sabe hastido le ki ani in slon test ani basist topai da se che and vani da se nala e gut di kun sabe hasti tes nestlido le diso is shinai but the snow Leonard Peltier e di kun be ka nature di be not so's not de do da so work na nisidel ya get your e gut but bandel nesba he needs and a can kidini do of so aro da no I e gut de kun alt iso sabe has see dole e long. So I want to say about that much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Tracker, what got you, I mean, what got you involved directly with Leonard? I know that, I mean, he's such an important person to so many of us. What got you directly involved with this fight?
Well, it's a movement. And so in 1990, in school, in college, of course, that's how I learned about that. When I was 15, I learned about the American Indian movement. As you know, the dissemination of people, First Nations people, has created a lot of dislocation and relocation. So for myself, that was in 1990. And so we actually in 91 created petition and circulated that with a lot of advocates and activists, and it reached a lot of legal, you know, circles, and we had a lot of momentum going. And then that's when I first became known of him being as a political prisoner and not, and with the court proceedings that happened. We had actually in 1995 realized that maybe he was going to be released, and but when things changed, we see that now it's 2024 and we are still creating that movement and breathing life into it as we know it, with different ways of creating awareness. But Dawn, her work and the work of the ad hoc is just amazing, and I've known of the ad hoc committee for many years. However, I know that the things that Lenny talked about has to take precedence over, all the things that we know, because media, the Indigenous Forum, the Geneva Convention, the Washington today. His name is being said today, and his declaration in Washington now and all over. And so my involvement has been my lifetime for me, and it's something that I made a commitment to because those are my relatives, and I wasn't by any means there in 1975 or 76, but we learned about that through word of mouth. It wasn't in any history books. It wasn't something you learned when you went to school, college, university level. It was something you learned because you were in the circles and because you were in the movements of American Indian movement and other circles.
Absolutely. Dawn, what got you involved? Because I know you're the assistant of Jennifer Jones, who I'm so sorry could not join tonight, but she is incredible. So what first got you involved in this fight?
I've had a complicated life. Pedro Crow Dog was a baby that was born during the siege on Wounded Knee. And my formative years as a teenager, I lived in an Indian recovery house with a bunch of American Indian movement members. Our governor granted them clemency. And they gave me my spiritual foundation. I was reading about Pedro being born. I was reading Lakota Woman, and I was writing a book, and I wanted to use a quote from her book. She had passed, but the baby born on Wounded Knee was a man with a Facebook page. I messaged him, and we talked all night long. He ended up adopting me as a sister. And I learned of Leonard. I wrote him a letter and asked him what I could do for him, and I'm still doing it. He is an amazing man. As Lenny said, he's in trouble physically. His mind is sharp as a razor. He has spent 15 years in solitary confinement, over 15 years. They sentenced him to death by incarceration. He is a prisoner of war. I have got teletypes from the White House granting paramilitary powers to the FBI. They took over the Lakota Nation in a paramilitary fashion because they wanted uranium.
Sure.
And Leonard stood in the way. And you mentioned Joe Stuntz. They have never acknowledged his death. When the might of the U.S. military descended on that reservation, they were convinced they were just coming to kill everyone. They didn't know what was going on. And when Leonard and his people were running for their lives, they took the time to stop and pray for all three of those deaths, the agents and Joe Stuntz. They have never acknowledged Joe Stuntz. They have never acknowledged the 60 plus people that were murdered on Pine Ridge. And Tracker is just, I believe the ancestors brought her to us. I spent an hour with her on Saturday, and I don't do well when Leonard's in lockdown, because I know what he's going through. He's experiencing partial blindness because his medical conditions have not been treated. If he were out here, he would be rushed to an emergency room. They sentenced him to death by incarceration, and they are trying hard to enforce that. We are desperately trying to get him a medical transfer. Even the United States Parole Commission strongly recommended the prison evaluate him for medical transfer. And his attorney talks about the slow torture of lockdown, and that's exactly what it is. I spoke to Leonard a little bit ago. It's been a couple of weeks. It's been a week since I've heard from him. They let him out for an hour. Everybody's desperate to get to the phone. A fight breaks out. They lock everybody back down. I do have a statement that Leonard wrote in 1982. The Leonard Peltier support group got it to me, and I got Leonard's permission to read it. The man, he could have written it today. I was listening to your intro, and he said, I am the voice of everyone who died without having a chance. That is still his voice. And he asked tonight for help from all of us. He wants to go home and die with his people. He told me, I'm not scared of dying. I don't want to die in here. And, we all need to raise our voices. Would you like me to read this statement?
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, statement of Leonard Peltier. Solidarity with Palestinian and Lebanese freedom fighters. Greetings, comrades, brothers and sisters. I send to you and the Palestinian people my strongest solidarity during this critical period in the struggle of the PLO and Lebanese people against the forces of U.S. and Israeli aggression. Myself, members of the American Indian Movement, Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, and its support groups stand in solidarity with the struggle of the Palestinian people for their traditional land. We understand your struggle based on our continuing war against the U.S. government and their attempts to annihilate us as a people and to steal what remains of our traditional land, as shown by their actions at Wounded Knee, Big Mountain, and most recently at Lame Deer on the Northern Cheyenne Nation. The Israeli troops, in carrying out their genocidal campaign, are acting today as the 7th Cavalry acted in the past and continues to act in Indian country. They are the war criminals who will be tried for their butchery of the Lebanese and Palestinian people in Lebanon. If I were free today, I would take our red warriors to fight side by side with the freedom fighters of the PLO and to smash the imperialist forces of the U.S. and Israel. I know that the forces of liberation must and shall come together to fight as a united front in unity of the 4 colors. We, as red warriors, call upon the yellow, black, and white freedom fighters to stand united with the PLO in uncompromising solidarity against the Zionist forces of Israel. I send my love and blood as a prisoner of war within the belly of the beast to those who continue to struggle. Victory to the Palestinian and Lebanese freedom fighters. Leonard Peltier, POW, Marion Federal Prison, July 13th, 1982. The man could see into the future.
I cannot believe that was written over 40 years ago. Wow.
Exactly. That is pure Leonard. And he told me tonight, I'm not giving up. I'm not going to turn into a snitch. I'm not going to tell them what they want to hear. I'm not going to beg and say, oh, I did it. Let me go. You know, I've been married and widowed twice. I did not know what commitment looked like until I met Lenny Peltier. He says, if you believe in something, you must be willing to sacrifice everything. And he has. And Tracker was telling me, when you want to destroy a people, you take their heart. Leonard Peltier is the heart of Indian country.
Right.
Someone was telling me during the reign of terror on Pine Ridge, when you want to destroy a people, you take what's precious to them. They not only murdered over 60 people, beatings, rapes, people burned out of their houses. They shot their dogs and their horses. And they still did not give up. They would not open that reservation to uranium mining. And big coincidence, the day that the corrupt tribal chairman sneaks off to illegally sell uranium mining rights, those 2 agents blast in there.
Yep.
Leonard is a prisoner of war.
Absolutely.
And everything Ward Churchill, and I'm not going to get this quote right, but he said, after the truly vicious pattern of misconduct by the U.S. government that's been proven over and over again in open court, Leonard Peltier is a litmus test of whether the people or the police are ascendant in this country. We need justice for Leonard Peltier. In his sentencing statement, he said that, I know you are going to sentence me to 2 life sentences, and I know I cannot expect you to commit 1 act of justice for Native Americans. We need to demand 1 act of justice now. We need to get that man home. Thank you.
That was so powerful. Thank you, Dawn. Tracker, we use the word justice, and Leonard deserves and needs justice. But at the same time, even if he was let out today, is that justice?
Well, as Don said, if and for over, the time he's been in there, in my lifetime that he's been in there, what it would look like is a revolution if they released him, and they know that. Not only is he living, that we are living in a psyop, which is, psychological warfare, but we
Yeah.
are also, he is a prisoner of war. And so dismantling and separating the family from him was one of the key things that they did, knowing that they would have the heart of the people. And so now he's iconic. He's a martyr, and he still has not been released. There's been many presidents that have created clemency and pardon for their own people, for their own
Yeah.
political people, as well as political prisoners. And yet he is still in there. So what justice looks like, if he got out, was it wouldn't even be justice. We would have to create a word, because they kept him in for so long when they could have actually created a release a long time ago. So it wouldn't justice. Um, I don't know about justice. One of the things I wanted to really bring up with the lawyer, and I got to interview her. This was important because something that we're working on is a campaign, of course. And, as always, the ad hoc is always committed to a campaign and moving through and breathing life into this campaign for Leonard, because he's alive. So we have to keep breathing life into this. And so one of the antiquated processes that I want to bring up with, and maybe, maybe Dawn can speak of this when I do an interview with her as well, is the argument for making parole boards obsolete. Okay, just like the BLM, the BIA, the parole board should be obsolete. There's no need for the parole board. It is not even a process that is creates equality for anyone. And as we're, as the parole hearing went, um, the process was denied for those who needed to be there. And so I just wanted to say, it's inconsistency and bias. And the parole board can be influenced by subject factors, such as personal biases. But I just really feel that the lack of transparency, the parole hearings are often closed to the public and was close to the testimonies that he was supposed to have there, the people that could have spoke on his behalf. And so, these are things that we need to look at first, is the parole board in itself. And, it's like some of the things that have happened in history has brought us to the point where this is a secondary position that we have in our life, the work that we do. And like Lenny Foster said, he wanted to go to law school. So did I, but I didn't, because there are so many injustices that we are working on that, our primary things that we wanted to do with our personal life had to be on hold because, again, of the genocidal relocation and disparities, and the relocation and dislocation of the people, the First Nations. So anyway, I just want to say that much about that, because the parole board is antiquated and the process is never does work. To me, it reminds me of like the wizard behind the curtain.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And they were supposed to be abolished 40 years ago. They were given 5 years to phase out. Leonard and other old law prisoners were supposed to receive release dates. Leonard should have been released in 1992 or 1993. That's in the United Nations report. If you go to our website, you can find the United Nations report and all this information, including how to write Leonard. Leonard could use letters right now since he is locked down so much of the time. Large, bold font, because he is experiencing intermittent blindness. He loves a good joke. If you have a good story about, Leonard is so connected to his people. He is doing this for his people. Have been so many people that have contacted me and told me that Leonard has kept them off of drugs, gotten them out of gangs, and into college through his writing. You know, if you're one of those people that appreciates his sacrifice, write him and tell him that. At www.freeleonardpeltiernow.org. You know,
Yeah,
this is time for, and Tracker's right, we need to invent a new word.
Yeah.
It's justice, it's something beyond revolution. You know, the former senior agent Colleen Rowley came out and said they were holding Leonard out of a campaign of vengeance and vindictiveness. New agents are indoctrinated with their version of the events,
Yes.
not what really happened on Pine Ridge.
and can
Absolutely.
I add that within the system itself, the prison system, the word rehabilitation isn't even applied as a focus for those who are incarcerated. Parole
Yeah.
boards are tasked with determining whether an individual is rehabilitated enough for release. However, they often fail to consider long-term risk factors. The justice system integrates rehabilitation as a core component. However, he has never been considered for rehabilitation in any way. And so that's the injustice within the system. So injustice is the word right now. And
Absolutely.
we can see that within the system.
Absolutely. So I want to definitely give you all an opportunity to have some closing thoughts, and I'll just go around the circle. Dawn, what would you like people to take away tonight on this important day, and for Indigenous peoples as a whole, and or Leonard?
Raise your voice. There are more of us than there are of them.
Mhm.
The people running this country are corporate interests, oil, uranium. As Lenny said, water is a commodity now. We are running out of water. People who have wells are pulling up dirt. Indigenous people take care of their resources, so now they want to take Indigenous people's water. Raise your voice for Leonard, for the people on Pine Ridge that are freezing to death during the winter and dying of cervical cancer because Pine Ridge lost that battle. You know, they opened up the reservation to uranium mining. They've still got open pits. People are dying. It's not okay. Raise your voice for Leonard. You know,
Absolutely.
we need to do away with this insane system, and we can if we all raise our voices. Thank you for giving us this platform.
Absolutely. Tracker.
Yes, in solidarity, we can do participate in direct actions. And one of the most ones that brought clarity was like today there in Washington. Everywhere we go, we should be reading a declaration from Leonard. We should be saying his name. We should be breathing it every day. And right now, people can on this day, but every day, they can call. You know, the number 202-224-7703 for Senator Durbin. They can call a number, they can actually take action. All they have to do is make phone call or click and go to the Amnesty International petition, obviously, and they can go ahead and sign that. We can do that. Another thing we are doing is, with KPFK, we have a campaign that we're going to be airing an hour show, and that will be for people to call. We don't know what direction they're going to be calling, but we're going to have mass amounts of people in the media all over Turtle Island, Canada, to call in and to listen to the show and to be able to take action all together at once. And I think that doing a movement like that, which will create, you know, knowledge and awareness, that we're here and that we're not going to stop until we get a loved one and somebody, you know, to create to create a paradigm, to set a curve of what needs to be done. So yes, please, everyone, participate in one action.
Absolutely. Lenny, what would you like people to take with them?
While we continue to hope and pray that United States government will see fit to have some reconciliation and let Leonard Peltier release from prison. I think this next administration has a lot of responsibility in its dealings with the United States. Well, not only the United States uh, government, but between the Indian nations, as we exercise our sovereignty, we seek to have treaty rights, those concepts actually carry forth. Maybe the new administration, Harrison, uh, we can have our leaders sit down and make this one of the main talking point is to release Leonard Peltier. We'll put that on the table. I mean, that's what I'd like to see. Maybe it's being idealistic, but I would like to see that happen and have them deal with it. Let's see if they have the courage to act on that request, because all previous administrations, Clinton and Biden and Obama, they just didn't do it. And we hope Harris has the courage to act on it, to request and really release free Leonard Peltier. Then a real reconciliation will take place between Mother Earth, the four-leggeds, the indigenous people, and the United States government. That remains to be seen. I would like to see Leonard Peltier unconditional release. Let him go home, and it'll demonstrate to the world that the United States is serious about its treaties with the indigenous people, with the Indian people. Until then, those are just words. They're not acting up on compliance or enforcement. It's been one of the most difficult cases in the United States history. They don't talk about it in the schools, in the colleges. Failure of the United States government to comply with its agreements, with the treaties. You release Leonard Peltier, then we realize that the white man is serious about living in harmony with the indigenous people, the Indian people, Mother Earth, the forces of nature. And that's my feeling, my thought.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining tonight. It has been amazing. And it looks like Matt has put the website in the comments. So everyone, please check that out. Also, if you're watching, please hit subscribe, please hit like. Before we go, I do want to say two things. Thank you to Uhuru, Free the Uhuru 3. If you go to their website, they are looking for 500 letters for each Chairman O'Malley, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville. You can find Penny and Jesse have been on my show numerous times. They are incredible. They have been found not guilty of colluding with Russia, yet they have to go back to trial next month. So we are all sending letters to the judge. You can do it electronically right online. It's so easy. It took me like 5 minutes. But just make sure there are directions. You don't want to say, it's unjust for them to be arrested and stuff, which we know it is. But it's more to write about them as people. They're inspiring. Their community needs them, things like that. All very true. So definitely do that. They are actually due in 2 days, and we are short. We definitely need to hit that mark. So please do that. Also, I wanted to say, if you are new to my show or you have not seen them, Temujin Kensu is a dear friend of mine. I've been interviewing from prison for over 4 years. He has been proven innocent multiple times in a court of law, yet is still on his 38th year in prison. So please look at my shows, listen to his prison interviews. Definitely fight for him as well. Governor Whitmer has the ability to let him out with the flick of a pen. So we need all hands on deck for that as well. This is another case of injustice to the nth degree. So thank you all again so much for tuning in, and thank you all again for joining.
Profound respect to all of you. And let me say, Uhuru has been amazing standing in solidarity with Leonard. I know who writes Leonard. It's been people from Uhuru that have been sending him messages of solidarity. He needs to hear from all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so, so much for joining. And thank you all for watching. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And like Lenny said, every day is Indigenous Peoples Day.
Every day. Every day.
Every day. Let's
always to all of you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.
Look for miracles.
Good to see you again, Tracker.
Good to see you. Look for miracles and solidarity.
Absolutely.